consistent belief and action combined, I do think makes all the difference. And I've faced that choice many times in my life. And sometimes it takes me, sometimes like any other person, I mean, my goodness, I'm not perfect. I don't always get it right. But I do usually find my way back to making that choice. And that's part of the book, is I want to encourage other people to believe and believe enough to take action in a positive direction in their own lives.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Code 3 Life Reinvented. I am your host, AJ, and I have a very interesting guest today whose work spans the stage, the screen, entrepreneurship, writing, politics. He's an actor with notable roles that include shows like The Rookie or NCIS, Dahmer Monster, The Jeffrey Dahmer Story, or even Winning Time, The Rise of the Lakers Dynasty. He's got his own educational company, which we're going to talk about here throughout the course of the show. He's also an author. He just wrote a memoir that came out earlier this year called The Story of You, A Life Rewritten. And I think there's some really interesting nuggets and learnings that he shared in this memoir. And we're going to talk a lot about reinvention and, quite frankly, the importance of writing your own story. So with that, I would like to bring our guest into the show, Blake Cooper Griffin. Thank you so very much for being part of the Code 3 Life Reinvented family and conversation.
AJ, thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
You and me both. And as I like to start most of my episodes, I like to ask this question. Have you had a Code 3 moment in your life, a moment that shaped, maybe brought a greater awareness to you or shaped the way you think about things and got you pointed in a new direction?
I think I've had a few, because I do think that, certainly not super often, but I do think that there was a moment that elicited a chain of events, of other moments, other decisions. And as you kindly mentioned, I did just have a book come out about 2 months ago, The Story of You, A Life Rewritten. And page 1 of The Story of You really was a Code 3 moment for me. I was standing in a 8th grade classroom. I was a 7th grader. And during our school's free period, everybody had a job to do. And mine was to deliver notes from the office. I was relatively new to the school, and I had experienced a lot of bullying right as I had come in. And so I would always be anxious when I walked into a classroom. It was the end of the day, and I was supposed to deliver this note to this 8th grade classroom. And I walked in with the note, and I was really anxious. And I thought, Blake, all you need is 10 seconds. Just deliver the note and get out. And I walked in, and the room went quiet. And then someone hurled a homophobic slur at me, and everybody started laughing. I mean, just raining down on me. The teacher chuckled, didn't help. And it wasn't the first time I'd been called that word, and it certainly wouldn't be the last. But that day, I remember going out into the hallway and just being so humiliated and kind of doubled over. And I faced a choice, because I thought to myself in that moment, I thought, Blake, you are just going to have to accept that this is your life. Like, this is what it's going to be. And in that moment, for the first time, I said, no, I don't accept that. I signed on to the idea that things could change, that they could improve, and that I could take action, even though I didn't know what it would be yet, to live the life that I wanted to live. And I always say not much changed externally after that day, but I had a new superpower, which was that I had signed on to the tiniest kernel of belief, and consistent belief and action combined, I do think makes all the difference. And I've faced that choice many times in my life. And sometimes it takes me, sometimes like any other person, I mean, my goodness, I'm not perfect. I don't always get it right. But I do usually find my way back to making that choice. And that's part of the book, is I want to encourage other people to believe and believe enough to take action in a positive direction in their own lives.
It's a really poignant part of the book as we jump into your story, as you've just described right there. And I remember reading that, and what got me, but it was the teacher who, when this was happening and they were hurling these slurs at you, and she looked down and chuckled, something like that. My heart cracked for you. I was like, oh, no, this person should be defending you and making sure that everybody is safe and respected. So it must have been incredibly trying.
That was tough because I think in that moment, I was looking to the authority in the room, hoping that there would be some help. My eyes were kind of pleading with her. And I also had to walk towards her. I mean, if you talk about, like, as you said, I'm an actor, you think about the actable part of it. Not only is she chuckling it off and everybody else is laughing and using this word over and over, I have to then walk and take the note and hand it to her as if, like, so like that sucks.
Yeah,
but at the same time, here's the thing. It was nothing about this book is a retribution tour. As you've read it, I don't use any names. I'm not interested in, I hope that people have a different view now and that they would do something differently. I think it's important to know that people can grow. And so I hope that that teacher has grown, and I hope they have. But yeah, in the moment, was that really tough? Yeah, that was tough.
You share a lot of deeply personal things in your book, The Story of You, A Life Rewritten, and I've really enjoyed reading it.
Thank you.
When writing the book, what truth were you finally able to say out loud that you hadn't been able to say before? Like, where did your soul really come out and say something in the book?
So many.
Yeah.
I mean, so many things. Because look, I think that having been bullied, having then in the book, I go on to talk about my experience with conversion therapy, with facing some career challenges when I first started my acting career. In so many different ways, I had been taught that to hide is best. So hiding things, right, is best. And we're all, in some way, I mean, I think that if you're being bullied in a school, you have to create safety for yourself. So in some way, that instinct was right for me when something's unsafe, right? So this idea that everyone can just share everything is a little bit of a luxury. It's not a little bit of a luxury, it is a big luxury. There's a lot of people that cannot do that for many different circumstances. And I want to be clear, in the book, I do not pretend that my struggle is somehow more difficult than so many others. I've been very blessed too in my life. And I talk a lot about that in the book too. This is not just trauma dumping on people. It is also other things as well. And I've had so many people that encouraged me, and so many people that were good to me, and so many people that believed in me. And so I hope to be that source of belief. But I only have my story. So I try to tell that truthfully. And I try to tell that honestly. And I think that word honestly is important because there's more of a sharing in that. I'm not just recounting the events as I remember them. I'm saying, what did it mean to me? A couple of the things that I realized was that my perfectionism is a hindrance. Sometimes I really talk about the dreaded perfectionism in this book. It's one of the concepts I talk about that stands in the way to success. That's one thing that I learned about myself. I also learned, as I talk about in the foreword of the book or in the introduction, I talk about that I still fight this impulse to be super safe, to not share. And so much so that I wrote the book without chapter 6 as it is today. I wrote the book twice, and I both times did not include chapter 6. And then finally, after reading it all, I thought, if I'm going to ask people to really delve into themselves, and certainly you have a right to privacy. You don't have to write a book. But I was writing a book about asking people to delve into themselves and look at themselves. So I thought I need to tell my story, this was the story. Chapter 6 is the story about the spiritual counselor when I was 17 that was a conversion therapist, basically. And I told that story for the first time. Many of my friends had never heard that. But the bigger key there was that I didn't want to include it, even when you're writing a memoir and guidebook. And yet that is still a learning for me. How do you share? How do you make that okay for yourself? That's been a learning experience.
Chapter 6, the conversion counselor, was that the hardest part to be honest about?
Yeah, because it was, I think. It certainly was the one that clearly, I think it was because I left it out twice. And I think because there's a lot of, and I'm very honest about it in the book, there were so many people involved that I didn't want to, I've kind of moved past that. I have a wonderful family and I didn't want people to get the wrong idea about my family. They were doing the best they could. To their credit, I gave them the book before I published it with chapter 6 in it. And they said, you absolutely have to publish this. I had said, let's leave it. I can leave it out. They said, no, you have to publish this. This man was, and this is from my point of view, people like that prey on the entire family. And that's one thing that has to be clear, because we got to set the stage. When this happened with me, it was, I think, like 2002. Matthew Shepard had been killed just a few years earlier for being gay. And the news was certainly not talking about gay marriage and gay adoption very much. And people had a lot of, even in media, we weren't yet, the life of a gay person was survival at best. So I thought, well, why bring all that back up? So much has changed. People have changed. I'm in a good place. And I have this like loving, wonderful family and friends. Why bring this back up? And yet I also thought that the real reason is because, yes, I think it's important to say that conversion therapy, mine was not what some people think of. Mine was sort of like talk therapy, and it didn't go on very long. Let's just be clear. As I say in the book, we had a family session and my parents were like, this is nuts, and ended it. But I had done phone sessions before. Now with the Supreme Court, they've come to say that conversion therapy can be allowed for minors. And so, yes, I do think that it's something that when the law does not protect us, we do need to tell our stories. That being said, even if you don't have my story, you and I were chatting before, you're like, and you were saying that you hadn't experienced these things, and yet it spoke to you. What I know is story, hence the story of you, is the way that we key into self-exploration too. And the title of the chapter is not conversion therapy chapter. It's when the world hands you a story that you just don't want. We all know what it's like to be handed a story that we don't want. And if we don't know, we will one day, unfortunately. That is the human condition, the part of life that we all have to encounter. And so many of those stories are so much tougher than my own. I really feel that as I've gone out and talked about the book, that a lot of people have shared those stories with me about the ones that they just didn't want. And I hope that the way that I talk about how I came back from that and how I rewrote my story, how our family rewrote the story of our relationship, I hope that that's helpful to people in many different circumstances. And so that's why I think it's important to talk about it.
I'm confident that your story is going to help people, without a doubt. And I really enjoy reading it and how you share some of these deeper topics, or heavier topics, I should say. And yet you're positive. You come across as a very positive person and quite inspirational. And I appreciated that balance.
It's a daily choice that we make. And sometimes I fail, but that doesn't mean that we can't make the choice tomorrow.
As you're talking about things here, one of the things I value deeply, and we were talking before the show that my memoir is coming out this year, it's about authenticity. And that's absolute importance in my mind to being a source of joy. And I think in a way that dovetails nicely into what you were saying in your book about rewriting your story. Is there a challenge in rewriting your story where you rewrite your story so it is acceptable and looks good to other people, and it may not reflect who you truly are? Like, is there a tension there that you would advise people to think through as they rewrite their story?
Rewriting your story, I think, can be a very internal process. It doesn't need to be like me writing the story of you wasn't necessarily me rewriting my story. It was a view into how I reclaim my narrative. So I don't want listeners or readers to feel like they have to like write it in a clean book to reclaim their narrative, to write their next chapter. I think that the way to avoid doing it for others, which something I've had to learn, is I have a kind of anxious personality. I'm very acquainted with the people pleasing. That habit has been and continues to be something that probably holds me back in ways, right? And something I have to continue to remind myself. It has good intentions in many ways. And in other ways, it has a place, it comes from a fearful history. I do have to continue to remind myself to not do things just so that they look good. But I think the part of the way that you do that, which is what I advocate for in the first couple of chapters, is really getting to know yourself, getting to know the things that you've had success in already. I have this section about the personal brag book, PBB, which my mom has something called a happy drawer. I'm from South Carolina originally, so she has a happy drawer. And it really inspired me to create my own happy drawer where I put things that have meaning to me. And I encourage the reader to put things, even if they're just a little note where someone said, thank you for doing this, or if it was an achievement you had, or even if it was something that meant something to you. I've recently taken up painting. I am not very good. But even if someone took up painting and like me, you're not very good, you might be proud that you started a new hobby, that you dared to try something new. In the book, I talk about celebrating those things and letting them be external reminders that you have made impact, you have made change, and you can do it again. I give some other exercises in the book about really honestly thinking about your life as a movie. That's one of the exercises. And like delving into the past and then using that to maybe create where you want to go next. And so I think if you start from that more authentic place, while also remembering the relationships in your life, we're not forgetting about how we're impacting other people, for sure. But we're also knowing that you're ultimately the person that's in control of following your goals and going after the things that you want. So waiting for it to come from the outside isn't a very reliable strategy.
In the book, you emphasize action. It's one of my favorite A words out there. Why is this a big unlock for people?
Action is everything. Well, it's not everything, but it's a big thing. I talk about my mom a lot in the book. My mom and I are very close. She's been quite as my father has too, he's certainly a person of action. But my mom had this saying, she's like, God helps those that move their feet. I'm sure that's not her saying. I think other people say that, but she would say it to us. And I think it's because I talk about there is so much beyond our control. So a big part for me is like, somebody's like, you're going to write a self-help book. And I said, no, I'm writing a book that's part memoir, part guidebook. Because I want people to say, it's not just believing, right? It's belief plus action, right? So I don't want people to think, there's this thing I talk about in the book called toxic positivity. We all know what it is, right? And it's just, you just have to sit here and think on it and just think about it and just keep thinking about it and let's just keep thinking. But I could sit here, AJ, and be like, I am starving. And I can think about that turkey sandwich. I'm going to put some mustard. That'd be great. And then maybe, do I have a tomato? I got it from the store. Okay. Maybe a little mozzarella. I can think about it. But until like I put my feet on the ground and I stand up and I go into the refrigerator and I put it together, I've got nothing to eat, right? So action is at the core of everything we do. But it's also at the core to solving those bigger problems. And I think that we often feel like conditions have to be perfect to begin taking action. And I think that is where many of us fall down, right?
Isn't that just such a problem thought, right? Like it's got to be perfect. It has to be the right time, all these things, right?
Absolutely, right? Like think about you wrote your book, right? Mm-hmm. And I know what that's like. It's It's a hard thing to sit down, and especially when you're talking about stories from your own life and you want to be respectful and be honest and all those things, right? But you could have had that going in your head all this time. And until you put it onto the keyboard or whatnot, onto the paper, there's nothing there, right? I think that the one thing in my life that I do feel like I've been consistent with, not always, no perfect record here, but is, okay, I've got to take action. And then what happens is that there is a chain reaction. I think it's Newton's third law. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So the idea is actually scientific, that if there is action taken, there will be movement, right? It may not be the result that you wanted, right? But thoughtful, positive action, I think, is usually the best indicator of some form of future success, either whether it be modest or great.
Action brings clarity. To your point, we can sit and think about it till we turn purple, but until we start taking steps toward it, then we start getting the clarity and things start to unfold for us. And then to your point, action creates an equal and opposite reaction, and things are in motion and movement, and action begets more action and so forth. But yeah, I was glad to see that in your book around action and encouraging people to take the action. I think another element of the book that came out to me too is your notion of like community and the power of having the community and support. Share your worldview on that.
I own an educational company called Brainworks Team. It's a educational mentorship company. It's a small company, but we have a lot of different services that we provide. But one of the things that I'm most passionate about is coaching and mentoring young people into community service. And this comes from my own experience in politics. I was national surrogate for 3 different presidential candidates in the last 3 elections. And then also just my work with healthcare, trying to make it more affordable for more people, because I know that healthcare is something that touches all of our lives, as well as my interest in anti-bullying efforts and also my deep love and support and desire to help those in the special needs community. So those things have been really paramount in my life and have meant a lot to me. And then I also see in young people how I thought to myself, we work with these young people who are so bright, who have so much to give, who are so, these days, I mean, I just see these kids work so hard. I mean, my gosh. And they're in a environment now where there's 97 screens, and you turn on the news, regardless of one's affiliation with anything, it seems like every day it's like more news, more stress, more this. I think about these students, and a lot of them want to help or want to build their confidence. And then one day I thought to myself, well, what really built my confidence? And what builds confidence? And I think that building confidence is seeing that you can make impact in the world, really seeing it. Similar to the personal brag book, right? The idea is that I see externally that I am here. I am here. And I matter in some capacity, right? And that is the same with service. And so in the book, in chapter 8, I talk about finding your passion project. That's what we call it at Brainworks, is helping people find a passion project. But that starts with, what community do I want to help? What community? It can be my own community. It could be a community I'm not part of. It could be, in fact, I think it's great when we help a community that we're not part of, because why? We educate ourselves, right? Then we make real impact in a community. And then we also, in the process, as we're trying to either do the drive for the children with incarcerated parents, or we're writing the cookbook that's going to help young people, with the proceeds to are going to help young people that are struggling with eating disorders, or whether we are arranging the field day for students with autism, right? Or we're going and working on the farm that's going to help young people with special needs that are working on their strengthening their muscles, right? Whatever we're doing, we're making real impact in those communities. And because we're trying to generate help there, we're also not only educating ourselves, we're educating our peers, right? We're educating, if we're adults, we're educating our different friend groups about that. If you're a young person, you're using your social capital at school to let people know about these different communities. And that is a snowball effect that helps everyone. It's a two-way street. And I believe that, though, builds so much confidence no matter what age you are. And I certainly see it in the people that we coach at our company. Suddenly it goes, if I have the impact, I had a student who did a drive for people who had gone to prison and served their time. And when they came out, the student did research to see that when people have a job after they are released from prison, when they get a job, they are very unlikely, much less likely to return to prison, right? But without a job, that chance goes up that they might return. And so my student had collected all of these clothes to partner with this organization that coaches people leaving the correctional system and to get a job and how to answer those questions. And they needed clothes, business clothes to wear to these things. And my student got, I don't know, something like 400 pieces of clothes. And suddenly what they realized was that 400 people were walking in the world now getting a chance to rewrite their story. My student had come up with this idea to help these people. And they learned a lot in the process too. They did the research, they did the brainstorming, they came up with these ideas. And then they also got to see that they had this real world impact. And I was blown away. I was really blown away. And I think that we think that the time to do that is only in high school or like only in college, but no, we can do that now.
It makes so much sense. And making an impact is incredibly powerful and fulfilling. And you do talk about that in the book. But as it relates to the company you're talking about is your company called Brainworks Team, right? Brainworksteam.com is the URL. For someone like you who's such an accomplished actor, whether it's on stage or on the screens, be it TV or the big screen, I mean, this is something that as I understand, it's like really, I mean, obviously you've just spent a fair amount of time talking about, like something you're super passionate about. Like what is Brainworks Team, like the nuts and bolts of it, and how does it fit into your life? How do you have time for it?
Brainworks came to be because I had booked the lead or a series regular on an NBC show. And I talk about this in chapter 3. I'd booked a great part. It was it was the first series regular I'd booked. I'd gotten some other roles, but it was a big job. And I talk about how I had been in debt. And I was very young. I was in my early 20s. And I'd been in debt. And I got this check from doing this show. And suddenly I was able to get out of debt. God's blessing to be able to get out of debt. And then I thought, well, I should move. I say in the book, because I had gotten held up at gunpoint weeks earlier. I said, I should move. I need to move to a better area. And then I thought, or maybe I want to go on a vacation. Because at the time I was working 72 hours a week. I was doing 8 to 5 assisting 2 different people. I'd have an hour for dinner. And then I would do 7 to 10 or even sometimes later, 6 to 9 or whatever. And I would do that every night of the week. And then on Saturday and Sunday, I would do like 8 to, it was crazy. It was like 8 to 9 tutoring all over town, right? So at night, 6 to 9 tutoring. And then on the weekends, it was all day. And that's what it was taking for me to live in LA at the time and to be able to have jobs that were flexible enough for me to audition. So I thought, well, maybe I'll just go on this great vacation. I'll go to like, I don't know. And then I thought about what I really needed was to do something that would sustain me, and regardless of what happened in the entertainment industry. And so I said, well, if I'm going to be doing something, I want to do something I'm passionate about, right? That was the moment that led to starting Brainworks Team. I thought about how I really enjoyed, at the time, as I said, I was doing this tutoring at night and working on the weekends, doing academic tutoring and like kind of executive time management coaching. And I liked seeing people improve and I enjoyed it. And so I thought, well, what if I started a company that was educational, mentorship driven, but at its core was about meeting people where they are and saying, how do we build from here? Not can we build from here? How do we build from here? And that again goes back to that belief element and sort of is part of the book too. I'm kind of realizing this as I'm speaking. It is that same sort of impulse. So Brainworks Team started out like that. It started with one or two people working with me, and then it expanded and our client base expanded. We've never actually spent $1 on advertising. It's been a word of mouth business. We work with students all over the country now, and we do many different things. There is this tutoring element. I realize that's an important part of meeting students where they are. Some people come to us because they want to master something in a way that is, they've got an A- and they really want that A+. Some people, though, have complicated or different learning profiles and need some more one-on-one. And then we have other programming. We have community service programming. We have college coaching, but college coaching in a way that, again, meets the student where they are, teaches students how to do the work. Because one thing I know is that if you hand someone a checklist of what to do, you've taken away their agency. You've taken away how to learn, how to do something and be confident in doing it. You know, we are really process driven. And that's why I think we also see the results that we do, is that our students work hard and we coach them through it. But there's many different services that we provide.
How do you have time for it?
Oh, yeah, that's good. I don't know. You know, I have gotten really good at time management for myself. I do juggle now, I guess, 4 things with the book. I still do my political advocacy work. That, of course, is when people bring me in and want me to speak and do like speaking engagements. I do, as I'm talking with you today, you got blocked out in the calendar for the book. And before you came, we were doing an audition. My assistant and I, we were filming an audition. So the workday is long. I usually work from about 7 a.m. answering emails to about 8 or 9 at night. And it's different things throughout the day. But I like that. I like the diversity of it. But at the core of all of it, and I'm not making this up, it's the reason I wrote the book. I'm not saying this after I wrote the book. At the core of everything I do is story. It's whether I'm telling the story of a character that I'm excited to play and to investigate in their lives, helping a student craft their own story, whether that be through the classes they choose, the community service project that they want to work on, the extracurriculars they're involved in. So whether I'm crafting their next chapter in their life, whether I'm talking about the story of our democracy and what's the story we want to create in this country that we want to live in next, or whether that's writing a book about storytelling. Story really is at the heart of all things for me. And so I hope that the book, every person's different, but maybe it can give them a little bit of a glimpse how story can move them in their own lives.
We segued a little bit into politics because I do want to spend just a few minutes talking about your interest in advocacy and involvement there. So you have been, as I understand it, out on the campaign trail for the last 3 Democrat presidential candidates, and I think pretty actively so. How has that shaped the way you think of your own story?
The reason I'm doing it is because I think we don't talk to each other anymore in this country. And it's like, that's got to change. I want to have a bit of a caveat to say the book is for everyone. The book is for anyone who wants to have a respectful conversation about how we can change our stories. You do not need to live my life experience. I can never truly know what someone else is going through. And so it really is about creating a dialogue. So I say in the book, this book is not to change your vote. It is here to inspire people to think about different ways to engage in the art of writing stories, including if you want to be involved in advocacy work. But I have to be able to talk about my life in the book. And a big part of my life has been working for or being a national surrogate for Hillary Clinton, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, President Joe Biden, and Vice President Kamala Harris. Those are moments that have transformed me. I think what I saw is that action is necessary because no matter who you support, what we see is that people who take action and decide to run, decide to be a part, decide to engage with the system, decide to vote, those are the people that win. They don't win every time, right? But the idea is that you have to engage in order to be in the game. And I think that there's a lot of people that, and I can understand it, feel very turned off to the political arena. And you certainly don't have to do it in the way that I do it. The packaging does not need to look the same for everybody, right?
Right.
I do think finding a way to engage and to take action in our country, in our world, is important because we need your voice. Your story matters, right? If you came to me, AJ, and you explained an issue you were having in your life, I would suddenly have more context for who you are and what you're going through. And even if it was not my experience, and maybe even if I hadn't encountered this kind of story that you tell me, I'm making this up, we don't know each other, but I would have more context for you. And if I were voting on something that mattered for you, I might reflect. I think that when we get involved and we make our voices heard in democracy, what that does is it at least creates space in the person's brain that you're talking to, that they've now had that experience of hearing about your healthcare concern, right? Hearing about what we need to do to make sure that people with special needs have adequate services in this country. Hearing about why it's important that LGBTQ plus rights be at the forefront of lawmakers' mind. Hearing about how we might need to make some changes to the criminal justice system. It's being a part of the conversation. So I see people, whether it was in Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, who people may have voted for or may not have, she entered an arena so long ago that was not made for her, and she changed it. And she's still engaged. She dared to be first. And that is kind of how I've seen people like that. That transformed me too. Because you can, I hate to say it, you can steal from those people's energy and say, even on my own smaller level, I can take that framework and apply it to my life.
I didn't think in the book when you talked about these things that it came off as inherently super political. One side, if you're a listener and those aren't your candidates, I don't think that's what Blake was trying to say. But I think if you heard what he just said here, I think is phenomenal about getting involved, being involved in the conversation, sharing your story so we all can learn. For someone who's listening right now and feels stuck in a story that looks good on the outside, but it doesn't feel right on the inside, where do they start? Of course, the first place would be read your book, but what would be something else that they can
do?
On
Amazon.com and Barnes & Noble. Where do you begin? Well, first of all, I think you begin with the understanding that we all start where we start. I really go back to, we touched on it earlier, is I think we're all waiting for this time to be at the place to begin. We're all waiting for that time to say, okay, it's okay for me to think about starting a family. It's okay for me to think about starting that business. Conditions are just perfect for me to change jobs. Conditions are just perfect to take that acting class. I really have always wanted to try that rec soccer league, but I'm 40 and why do I don't know. And we're all waiting for that moment to strike. My perspective is that you can wait forever and then you didn't do it. So that's just simple. We've heard these things before, but I just think that they need a constant reminder. If you feel that you want to make changes in your life, but you don't know where to begin, get out a piece of paper. Write down at the top of the paper, what do I want? I did this. By the way, this is my whole thing. Nothing that I'm saying I didn't do, right? That would be disingenuous. So
I've done this exercise myself, just for the record.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Right. Write it down. What is it? What do I want? And write down what you want. Then look at what you want. And there is a framework for this in the book. Look at what you want and ask yourself, what is one action I can do today? One action I can do today that would move me closer. That it might be this much closer, or it might be 3 feet closer, right? Let's take something super simple. You always wanted to take an improv class and you work a finance job and you're wanting to explore creatively. You don't want to leave your job, but you're scared. You're like, I haven't done an improv class before. So I'm not asking you to not be scared. I'm not asking you to release all of your fear today. That would be insane. Fear is part of the equation. Anxiety on some level is going to be a part of the equation. Now, if you're having enormous amounts, then you need to go talk to someone, and that's great. We can't think that anything uncomfortable is not going to be a part of the situation. Okay. But what you could do is call around. That could be one thing you do today, and look at the different options for improv classes. Let's say that you had an idea to start a side graphic design business, right?
Yeah.
And you were like, well, if you wanted to do one thing today and you wanted to start small, you could look at, what do I need to start a landing page for my graphic design business? And let me tell you why I think all of this is so important. Because once you make the phone call about the class or you look up the landing page, you are seeing yourself doing it. You are already doing it. And then you build from there, right? Because confidence comes not all at once. Confidence comes as you take action. And then you say, look at me. Okay. I got on and looked up about landing pages. Or I called and entertained that notion. Suddenly I'm seeing myself in this theater, standing on that stage, looking at the picture on the website. I can envision it. Or I'm seeing the landing page and, oh, you know what? I probably would choose blue. Or I might choose hunter green for the whatever. So that's what I would say is don't try to solve it all at once. You're going to solve it as you go anyway. So start.
Take those steps. Blake Cooper Griffin, it has been an utter joy speaking with you. And I'm afraid I could probably talk to you for 2 more hours and it feel like 5 minutes. For those that heard your story and feel inspired to follow you or get involved with your work or contribute in any way, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yes. So you can go to blakecoopergriffin.com. And so that's my landing page. And you can find information about the book there. If you're interested in Brainworks Team, as you mentioned, thank you, brainworksteam.com. And I'm an Instagram guy. That seems to be the most happy place for social media. So that's where I am. It's not always a happy place, but you can follow me at Blake Cooper Griffin. And I'd love to hear about what you think about the book. So please let me know. You can get The Story of You, A Life Rewritten on Amazon and on Barnes & Noble, as well as many different online booksellers. But I hope that you'll read it and I hope that you'll reach out and let me know what you think. And AJ, this has just been such a great conversation. I really appreciate it. And I am excited to read your book and I wish you so much success on it.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. I hope I can enjoy even a portion of the success you've had with yours. The book is, again, The Story of You, A Life Rewritten. Some great wisdom and honesty and vulnerability, as you can probably get a sense from Blake in this conversation. I think he's that way to his core, I believe, and it certainly comes through in the book. Listeners, if this conversation resonated with you, please come check out our website, my company website. My company is called More, and our website is bemorealigned.com. And it's a destination for people like you, accomplished professionals, high achievers, driven people who've been successful, but know something doesn't fit anymore. And they want to come back to themselves. Maybe we could invite Blake to come teach a workshop or two on writing a story on the More platform. All right, you're on, Blake. I'll follow up on that. But you can always reach me. I would just like Blake said, he'd love to hear from you about his book. I would love to hear from you about the podcast, anything we're doing, the guests that we have, ideas for guests, criticisms, whatever it is. I want to hear it. The best email is hello@bemorealigned.com. And please remember, life does not wait for the perfect moment. We talked about that quite a bit today. You've just got to take action. It waits for the moment you decide to stop settling. So when your status quo feels a bit like a status no, it's time to listen and act. I'm AJ Jones. Once again, until next time, stay honest, stay aligned, and don't wait for the wake-up call.